what do we have on your walls behind you? Is that Ready or Not?
Oh yeah, Ready or Not, and yeah, Resident Evil, last one, and Chucky TV series.
Oh, okay. So the Ready or Not. So was that your handiwork? You had to do that hand where
Oh
the
yeah, yeah, that and the bodies and all. I mean, oh, I love that movie. Samara's fantastic in it, but it's yeah, it was a fun one.
you guys are you gonna come back? I heard they're gonna do a follow-up. Are you gonna be back on that?
I've talked to them. It's
Yeah.
it's been delayed to next year, but yeah,
Okay. Well, that's I kind of don't
I'd
want I
love to
want
do it
that.
again.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm sure. I kind of want that character to like have a happy life, so that's the only thing I don't love about that. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's great. I didn't know you worked on that. That was fantastic. So
yeah.
Sasquatch Sunset. Man, I had no idea what I was getting into. Um you know, so for anyone who's watching or listening to this, I assume you are now aware that Sasquatch Sunset is a pretty much completely dialogue-free film in which the four characters are Sasquatches who only
Yep.
communicate through grunts. And they have very detailed prosthetic faces, costumes. So I think before you get into the specifics of how you pulled it off, I would love to know when you got pitched this assignment, like how did that even go? What was this pitched to you as?
Because I mean, the Square Peg was the production company behind it, which is Ari Aster's company with Lars and Tyler and those
Yeah,
guys.
that
And
tracks.
yeah, and so I've done most of Ari's stuff over the years since Hereditary, and Tyler Capelone, who is the producer on this, he just reaches out to me constantly for their stuff, and it was at like kind of the height of COVID. He just messaged me about this one and was like, I got a really weird project for you, and it's different, it's unique. I guarantee you've probably never done anything quite like it, and we can make it even though it's still COVID world. And it's going to be, I'd love to send you the pitch for it. And I'm like, well, what is it? And he's just like, it's basically like a year in the life of a clan of Sasquatch. And I was like, okay, that's weird and different, but I mean, the funny thing is like, I mean, as somebody who does what I do, I mean, one of my kind of go-to favorite ever movie characters, creatures, monsters, whatever you want to call it, was Harry from Harry and the Hendersons that Rick Baker did, and
Was going to ask you
and
if that was an inspiration. I knew it. Okay.
well, I mean, for me personally, it was yes. I mean, he's in my top three kind of movie, prosthetic creature characters ever. So, and I love the fact that he was a character, rather than just a monster, and, but had never been able to do a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot kind of thing. And I was like, and I always said this to people, this is like, every time you see a Sasquatch, it's either a beef jerky commercial or it's a furry thing in the woods killing campers or something like that, So, I mean, it was nice to be able to be approached about something that where they're actual characters in the movie, and not just characters in the movie, but they are the movie. So so yeah, the pitch was not a hard one at all. It was like the moment he said Sasquatch, I was like, done, we'll figure it out. Let's make it happen.
Okay. So you say figure it out. So this film is set in the outdoors. That's never easy, which means you have furry creatures in these suits
Yeah.
and they're in water, they're carrying sticks around, they've got leaves on them. That's got to be a
Uh-huh.
nightmare, right? In terms of wear and tear. Tell me
Yes.
about making these suits that actually could survive a shoot like this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the movie was on and off for 2 years with trying to get the funding together and everything. So I mean, even though the call came in like in 2020, I think it was. I mean, it was 2 years earlier than when we actually made it. I mean, it was one of those things that just started and stopped and started and stopped, and then finally, they had a financing issue with somebody who was involved in it. I think they went bankrupt or something, the company. But anyway, Jesse stepped in himself and was like, I'll front the money. I don't care. We got to make this thing.
That's cool.
So by the time that happened, everybody was kind of all the, the Jesse was there. It wasn't originally Riley. It was another actress, and she had a clash with the schedule because she thought the movie had gone down again, so she took another job, and so then Riley came in, and but Riley was on a deadline to jump up to another project like 3 days after we wrapped, so we just had no time, and like what was supposed to be a 3 or 4 month build turned into like a 6 week build. Well, 5.5. We stretched it out to 6. So, I mean, but we'd had 2 years to talk the how we approached this. We had lots of time to think about it. We knew how we were going to make things. The money wasn't there to make 20 backups of anything. It was like we had the main suit and a replacement just in case. And it was just we chose to do them in foam latex, which is kind of forgiving and repairable, and it's better for the actors for movement, and it breathes, and it's good for them. So I mean, there was a lot of factors that were thought into it, but yeah, it was a nightmare. I mean, it was like it's the hardest thing I think we've ever done. It's like with the weather, throw them in a river, throw them in a snowbank, like I mean, roll around and the kind of thing, and I mean, it was like. You plan for this, but I mean, there's only so much you can do at the end of the day. And so our days would turn into, 2 hours of putting them together in the morning, and then as much shooting as we could get before it got dark, and then an hour of wrap out, and then 2 or 3 more hours of repairs. And then we would shoot on Saturdays sometimes. And if we weren't shooting on Saturdays, we were repairing things on Saturdays. So, I mean, it was a 7-day-a-week job, basically, for the 5 weeks, 5.5 weeks we shot. And if we weren't actually shooting, we were repairing. So just
So
anything
was
to
the
keep them on screen.
so I mean, obviously repairing, but there's things that happen to the suits that I imagine was this shot chronologically? Because, for example, they eat or they
No.
pour like blood and guts on them.
Oh
I
yeah,
kind of think there's no coming back from that, right?
fish
Once you
guts.
shoot that.
Yeah, the fish guts and stuff. Yeah, no, I mean the thing is like the prosthetic part of it, which is the head, is a new set of pieces every single day.
Okay.
So
So
there
it's
was
the
a there was
bodies
a
that are just you
the
only have
bodies
two.
we had to reuse. The hands we had backups. I mean, we'd replace the hands every now and then because they would go through the most wear and tear. The feet were built over hiking boots because of the terrain we were
Yeah.
on. So I mean, it was just they had to have grip to them, and so we had feet that had bottoms on them, but we also had ones that just had it was the tread of the hiking boots. Um, but yeah, the makeup is new every single day. But yeah, I mean that's part of the maintenance is
Yeah.
the all the lace and the hair that goes onto the faces. It's all lace pieces. They're all hand knotted and everything, and it's human hair. So
Really?
I mean,
Oof.
if you
It
can
was
wash it
human
out of your
hair?
hair, yeah, I mean it's it's like good wigs are usually built out of human hair. So I mean it's like somebody out there's sourcing their hair. But yeah, I mean it's all knotted out of human hair, one hair at a time into like this fine like wig lace. And if you can wash it out of your hair, you can wash it out of those hair pieces. So I mean every day
Yeah.
at the end of the day it was 45 minutes of each of us cleaning our respective characters' hair pieces. And then getting in with again new sets of prosthetics every day, so we didn't have to worry about that, but going back into the suits, the hands, the feet, whatever, and just anything we could do to keep them functional for as long as possible.
So tell me about there's a couple specific character moments. The
Mm,
alpha he's eaten toxic mushrooms and he's been poisoned,
yeah,
and you got
tripping
like
out.
his fur is sticking up like this. He's got just like
Yeah,
puke running down his face.
yeah,
Tell me a
yeah.
little bit about creating that look of this, like, I guess an already distressed character looking more distressed.
Yeah, I mean, we did want them looking, you know, we didn't want them to look like they walked out of a salon. So, I mean, we're kind of like they're living in the woods, they're rolling on the ground. We're seeing all this stuff happen. They're rolling in the mud, they're rolling in the snow. So, we wanted the hair to be kind of, you know, rough around the edges and like, twigs and brambles and stuff stuck in them and all that kind of stuff. I mean, they do groom each other, but so by the time we get to scenes like that, it's Yvonne Cox was one of our makeup people, and she did Nathan's makeup whenever he played, and it's getting in there, and it was deliberately teasing back the hair and roughing it up and then hairspraying it into place so it looked just I stuck my finger in a plug socket look, Albert Einstein look thing going on.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, like it's bringing in just, real world, makeup products, sweat and things like that, the glycerin, things like that to, give him the sheen that he's sweating and he's tripping out. And then the vomit and the puke and all that stuff. I mean, it's mixing up concoctions of, a lot of the time it comes from the craft table, quite frankly, the craft service table. You go find, oh, what looks interesting over here, oh, that kind of looks gross. Let's use that, and it would be like, oh, here's some pea soup. Here's some, Methicil, which is a food thickener. It's often in like McDonald's shakes and stuff. But, that and adding some food color to it, and like, oh, now it's green slime, and okay, let's crush up some cornflakes and throw it in there, and I mean, it's silly stuff, but it's just being creative and coming up with
Yeah.
these, something that just looks gross.
Yeah, the PAs are like watching you massacre the craft
Oh
services
yeah,
table, and they're just like, God damn it.
yeah,
Okay, so there's a couple specific body parts you knew I was going to ask about.
oh yeah, the
Um,
carrots.
yeah, okay. So there's a Sasquatch penis on display.
Hmm.
I don't know where to start. Talk to
I
me,
didn't either when it was
inspiration,
brought up,
design.
I mean, David and Nathan brought it up. I mean, David was all about it, and he's just like, no, we got to show it. And I'm like, it's going to be distracting, I mean, it's going to be there fully displayed throughout the movie. And he's like, yeah, no, I know. And I mean, but this is what it would be if they were out in nature. They're not going to be hiding these things. And I'm like, all right, but we had originally done some that were much more human, I guess you could say, and sent pictures of the sculptures to David and Nathan, and David's like, no, that's not it. It should be like a carrot. And it's like, oh, okay. So they're just these little things hanging out there. If you get the some of the foreign releases of the Blu-ray, I mean, there's little behind the scenes things, and it's like, I mean, there's actually, I just saw it the other day, and there's a little thing of like notes of things to do, and the bottom one is sew on dicks. So then they cut to in the video, it's me sewing one of these things to Jesse while he's wearing the suit.
Look, Ma, I made it, Hollywood.
But yeah,
Uh,
but I mean, I kind of went into it thinking it's like, oh, it's going to be like, the scenes of them, peeing on things, marking their territory, that sort of thing. Okay, we might see them then, and so we made ones that had plumbing in them so they could pee and that
oh,
sort
that's
of thing.
crazy. Yeah.
But I kind of figured that would be the end of it. And no, they wanted on full display all throughout, and if it's tucked in with the hair, but I mean, if it flops out there, then it does. That's just nature.
Now, what about you have the mother Sasquatch. She's got this pregnant belly, and
Yeah.
then obviously subsequently she gives birth to a baby Sasquatch.
Hmm.
Was this all you? You designed the pregnancy, the baby bump, and then you
Yeah.
designed the Sasquatch baby?
So we had the not pregnant version of her bodysuit. Then we had a second one that was with a belly, and then we had pads as well that we could put inside the suit and make the belly bigger and bigger and bigger. So it actually goes through about 3 or 4 different phases of, this is where she's at in her pregnancy. And then after delivery, it was like, take the pads back out, but it still has some of the excess. Um, so yeah, I mean, as far as that, it wasn't, it was just a second suit that we had made for her. As far as the baby, it was one of the earliest things we did for the movie was just some 2D renderings, and it was just in Photoshop, and it was like one of the first things we'd done was this little baby Sasquatch as a 2D render, but it was modeled in ZBrush in 3D and then imported and overpainted in Photoshop. So we had this 3D model that we actually 3D printed a copy of it life size and then used that as the starting point for the baby. The guy, the brothers approved that when they again, it's in the making of video on the Blu-ray, the foreign Blu-ray. But I mean, Nathan, when he came up to have his body cast, we'd already printed this thing out and was like, "Here's the baby," and he's like, "Oh, that's perfect, that's great," And but the schedule was so short that I mean, most of the baby stuff played toward the end of the schedule. So I was actually building the baby in the trailer while we were shooting. So it would be like we'd process in the morning, and then, Kayla, who was my assistant head of department, and Yvonne and Whitney, who were the other prosthetic artists, they'd all go to set, and I'd sit in the trailer and just try to build this baby as quick as possible with little mechanical functions in it and move around and, do its crying thing and all that stuff, sucking and all for the breastfeeding and that sort of thing. So it was rushed to say the least. But then, and the birthing scene was also something we fabricated in the trailer once we got there, where it was kind of like, oh, we need to have, we want to show it crowning. And it was, what? So, well, how are we going to do that? So I mean, we started making little prosthetic add-ons to go onto Riley's suit, so she'd bend over and, oh, there's a Sasquatch baby head popping out, So
Yeah, that was not something I expected to see going into this movie. So
there's
probably
a lot of
not.
things you don't expect to see. Um,
Um,
yeah,
what?
I mean, it's one of the things that's funny because I've seen it in more reviews than anything about her scratching herself and smelling her fingers and stuff, and everybody thinks that's just this obscene gesture, and it's like, no, she's realizing she's pregnant. That's the point of that sequence, that, and she keeps going over to others and showing it. It's like, not like, smell my fingers, it's not supposed to be, it's not supposed to be a gross out thing. It's supposed to be like, look, I'm pregnant. And it's that realization. I don't know that translates in the movie. I think some people who actually stop to think about it will figure it out. But I mean, a lot of people just go, "Oh, it's just like the road. They're shitting on the road," and so it's just another gross out bathroom humor thing, and it's not. So
Well, you've put that on the record now, so maybe people will appreciate it.
exactly, and that's why I said it. Since we're talking about the baby.
One of the other things is, did you age their faces at all? Since this takes place over a year, time progresses for
Yeah.
these characters a little bit.
Um, Everything was painted the same. I mean, between the four characters, there was 120 sets of prosthetics,
Mm.
and we had, a paint scheme locked out for each character, where all the pieces for each character were done the same. But then in the application, we were doing subtle changes as time went on, because I mean, and part of that was just trying to figure out exactly what it was, because I mean, again, the short prep, and then we got off a plane. We went to the production office they'd set up there in Eureka, loaded into a trailer. The very next day we're doing the test makeup, which was the only thing we had. And then it was like, okay, we figured out a few things. So we had a few hours the following day to make some color tweaks and adjustments and stuff. And then we're shooting. So it was like, there was no testing. There was no like, oh, any of this trial stuff ahead of time, figuring things out. So like the very first day we shot was out in this field, and it's actually when Jesse's character dies, and then you get this kind of flashback of all these moments of them playing with butterflies and everything, and that was day one. And they actually look a little bit different there than they do the rest of it, because we were still trying to figure out exactly what we wanted the color palette to be, and like,
Mm.
how, based on how they were shooting and everything. So it's partially that, of just establishing the first few days of exactly what photographs well under what lighting conditions, because we didn't get to test any of it. But then there's, again, subtle applications, color applications, especially with Riley being pregnant, that we were just kind of like, let's tweak a little this, let's do a little bit of this, and, not so much with a deliberate aging in mind as just kind of more the wear and tear of them,
Sure.
and coloring to the situation. So if they're in snow, I mean, we won't necessarily color them the same way as we would if they're in a sunny field.
Um, no, it's that absolutely makes sense. So when it comes time to the Bake Off, I think you guys will make the Bake Off. What do you think you're gonna most showcase here? Do you see this as a costume, the bodysuit, or is that also an extension of makeup? Where does the line begin and end of makeup costume? I don't even know.
It's different for all the different awards things that happen out there. Like the Emmys would look at that and say, from the neck down, it's the prosthetic suit is costume. It's not makeup,
Hmm.
because it's not actually glued to them necessarily. Um, the Academy doesn't really, in their rules, doesn't really
Yeah.
stipulate it has to be glued. It just says it needs to be, something that's, modifies the character's look.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
I
in my
love that.
mind, you know, you can't really totally separate them, because you don't have a character without the whole picture. But the actual makeup part of it is the collarbone up.
Okay.
um, is the heads in my mind. Yeah, I mean that's how I look at it. I mean I look at the lower half as being more of a costume, but I mean, but as a whole, it's a character. So you know, one doesn't work without the other.
Nominate them in both categories then, right?
I don't know
Costumes.
about that. No, we're very happy with the way the heads came out. I mean, I think they're expressive. I think the actors got to, you know, really. I when we went into this and they said, "Oh, we're going to put actors in these things," and I thought, on one hand, that's absolutely brilliant because you'll get these incredible performances. Because I mean,
Yeah.
usually it's stunt people and suit performers and stuff, and you know they're good at being monsters, but they're not good at necessarily at, you know, conveying character and emotion and stuff like that. So it was kind of brilliant in that sense, but at the same time, we're kind of looking at it going like, oh God, if they don't know what they're getting into, because I mean, it's a there's a reason that actors don't wear these things.
No,
It's a
of course.
chore. It's a chore. I mean,
How long did they spend each day in prep?
in the suits,
Well,
like
getting like how long did it take to
oh,
apply everything?
the actual application for the heads was about an hour and a half. You know, and then another half hour to get them into the suit and get everything blended together and everything with the hands and the feet and all that stuff. You know, but you know, throughout the day, we had gone in knowing because we went in knowing these were going to be actors that they weren't going to have that sort of necessarily that tolerance that like you know a traditional suit performer would have. You know, we made sure they'd be easy to get in and out of, so we could unzip them. I mean, this is the beauty of having hair is you can hide a lot,
Right.
but we unzip them and peel them down like you would a wetsuit, for example, and like try to give them some relief in that respect. Um, you know, I mean, it was still it was hard on them. I mean, there's no questioning it. I mean, and it's like you got to look at it as they're out in nature. They're not on a sound stage shooting it under ideal conditions and with a nice trailer to go back to and sit in the air conditioning or that kind of thing. I mean, we were out in the elements, and you know, it's everything you see is real, and then you know, no comforts of any sort of home comforts, I guess you'd say. I mean, none of that's there, and so you know, I mean, I'm happy with our work, but I know and I'm the first one to say that it would not showcase the same without having, you know, Jesse, Riley, Christoph, Nathan being so dedicated to what they had to do. So I mean,
Yeah,
it's a
they
package.
really sell a lot with the eyes and all.
Yeah, and that was a big part of the process in terms of the design. It was one of the first things I said to the brothers, and they were like, you know, well, that's great because we don't, you know, I mean, the eyes are going to be the only part of the actors that are going to be showing. We don't want to use lenses, and I was like, great, because that was the first thing I was going to say to you is like, you know, you're going to these because these are characters and they have to convey these emotions and stuff. You can't lose that, you know, window to the soul, as they say, you know, and I mean, some of it body language helps, but you know, I mean, Riley is. I think she steals the show myself. I mean, you know, mastered the 1,000-yard stare of, you know, a just beaten and battered, broken woman, just trying to keep the dumb guys alive. So
Yeah. Well, man, I really am rooting for your work in this film, this award season, and I know a lot of people are. I think it is something very unique, and you know, I hope you make it to the Bake Off, and I think it'll stand out there if you do. So, best of luck this season.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah. It's what are you working on next? Anything exciting that you could tell
I
me?
literally just, well, I mean, we spent after that, we did Ari's next movie, Eddington.
Yeah.
Um, we spent 9 months on Frankenstein with Guillermo.
Oh, I can, that's
Um,
going to be fun. I can't wait to see
yeah, and
what you put
we
together
just
there.
finished this week. We just finished Until Dawn with David Sandberg shooting over in
Oh,
Budapest. Yeah,
okay.
so
Is this
we were on that for
kind of
based on a
a
video game.
oh, interesting. Okay. Is it still horror
Yeah,
based though?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's different. It'll be fun.
Now, when you say it's
Yeah,
different,
just
that's
3 months in Budapest shooting that. We just got back this week, so
oh man. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat about this. And
I appreciate it. Thank you.
absolutely. All right.